Welcome back to my session 6 assignment video. This week we're going to be talking about validity and an introduction to the EdTPA special education. Learning targets for this week. 1. To be accurate, students will be able to accurately define the 3 types of validity evidence. I believe those are also in your vocabulary in your own words. Describe 2 ways a classroom teacher can ensure content validity of self-created tests. Create a learning target that's specific and measurable. I'll talk about that a little later. List the 3 main tasks of the EdTPA special education. That's an easy one, and some of you will use that as a question. What are the 3 tasks of the EdTPA? That's really not a good question, because all you got to do is look at the table of contents to know that answer. Create 4 types of selected response questions: multiple choice, fill in the blank, matching, and true false. Those are the only 4 types you're allowed to have in your selected response test. You have to have at least 3 questions of each type to accurately assess the content of the EdTPA special education. That's what you're going to write your test on. Every semester I get questions. Can I write a test on my math, my own math classroom? No. I have a couple purposes of this assignment: to get you familiar with the EdTPA special education and to get you to be able to make a selected response test that's aligned with your learning targets. This week we're going to explore the second leg of the triangle, this corner, which is validity. You will learn from Popham that it is not the test itself that is valid, but the inferences that you make from the results of that test. You have several vocabulary words this week: consequential validity, content-related validity, and predictive validity. Remember to fill out your vocabulary in your own words, as I mentioned before, as we go through the course. Session 6 assignments. You have a quiz this week on reliability and validity. Many of you have already taken it. The hard copy is available in course materials, and you have 2 chances to take it. Actually, 3 chances, because you can take the hard copy and then go in to the quiz discussion board and talk about it. But most of you are not doing that, but that's fine. You should continue reading in Popham. Chapter 4, I goofed on that last week. I said read Chapter 4 last week, but that's not the chapter on reliability. Chapter 3 is on reliability. I'm sure those of you that have the textbook know that. And Cohen and Spencer continue in Chapter 5. They cover both validity and reliability in one chapter. There is no discussion board this week. However, I have made the initial selected response test DB available for those eager beavers. If you click on it and you see that the groups aren't accurate, I've only changed one section so far, but I will be changing those groups to make them align with this semester. So please don't send me an email saying, Dr. Tom, I don't know what group I'm in. For this DB, you're in the same groups you've been in for every other discussion board. So keep that in mind. Except I know in my 22 section, I switched one person because 2 people have dropped out of the course. So make sure you look and make sure you're in the right group. I may have to do that to other groups as well. This session will begin our performance task by becoming familiar with the EdTPA special education. That's available in course materials. That's available on the assignment sheet. Make sure when you download it that it says September 2017 on it. I have many places throughout the course where I've put the EdTPA special education, and I haven't gone through and checked them all yet. I have done it in the assignment, so the EdTPA in your assignment is the correct one, 2017. You should begin reading and thinking about 4 or 5 learning targets which you want to focus. I would recommend looking at Task 3, Assessing Learning, because this is an assessment course, and the 5 rubrics that make up that section. Here they are: analyzing the focused learner's performance, using feedback to guide further learning, learner use of feedback, explaining the focused learner's use of communication, and using assessment to inform instruction. By the way, these are also part of the Danielson model, which New York City uses to evaluate their teachers and which we use to evaluate our student teachers. So it would behoove you to to go into that section and to make questions based on that. What I find most important is the differences between a score of 2 and 3 and between a 3 and 4. That's what most of you will get when you take the EdTPA. So I believe the technical aspects of the EdPTA, such as the 3 tasks, how many videos, permissions you need, etc., are really not big ideas. You will know those when you take it without really getting deep into the EdTPA. But knowing the nuances between a 3 and a 4 or a 2 and a 3 are really what's important. The most difficult task my students have in previous semesters has been creating the 4 or 5 learning targets to which you base your questions. Your questions need to be aligned with your learning targets. Targets need to be specific, they need to be measurable. Of course, I have provided you resources to do this. There are 3 documents embedded in the assignments instructions that will help you write good learning targets and objectives. I have placed a video in course materials on how to create the selected response test, along with an exemplar that I talk about. In the video, I suggest that you create a learning target for each of the 3 tasks and a 4th for the EdTPA vocabulary. You may do this, but now that I've become more familiar and I've been trained on how to grade the EdTPA, I believe we need to become much more aware of the rubric. So when you hear me say that, I've revised that, my thinking on that. I've also found that my students have an aversion to creating reasoning targets, which I've mentioned before. I've mentioned to many of you in the discussion boards. I challenge you to read Chipui et al., page 139. Some of you have read the Wiggins article and Susan Brookhart's article. I also have a link to here in my, and it's also in course materials. So also be sure to use the verbs I've provided to make your learning targets. Please, and I tell you which ones to avoid. You know, students will understand. Students will become familiar with. Students will know. Those are lousy objectives. They're not specific and they're not measurable. In my text of my teaching memo, I provided what I think is a good reasoning question. Check it out. It's a selected response reasoning question. So those of you who think you can't have higher order thinking in a multiple choice test, check out that question. You can see that the answer can't be gleaned from searching for the correct answer in the EdTPA handbook. Instead, you must make an inference based on your understanding of the nuances of the rubric. There are other sample reasoning questions in the exemplars that are in course session 6 course materials. As you begin to create your initial selected response test, be aware of the selected response test rubric, which is in the assignment, which outlines the requirements. You will have a chance to revise your test before submitting it to me for grading. So take advantage of the feedback you get from your classmates and the feedback you get from me. Finally, keep notes on this process because you'll be asked to reflect on it when you do your 3-point analytic summary, which is due at the very end of the course. So take notes. In that summary, you're going to have citations, and I have many materials that you can cite for doing this. So that's it for this week. Fall is in full swing, and winter can't be close behind. See you in 1 week.